నమస్కారం. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం విద్యార్థిని విద్యార్థులకు స్వాగతం. ఈనాటి ప్రసారంలో
Today's topic of discussion is communication media and libraries. This topic has been derived from Unit 9 and 10 of MLISc course material, Course 1, that is Information Communication and Society. Communication is the process of transmitting the information from one person to other, whereas communication media is the media that can be used to communicate the generated information to the user community. In transmitting this generated information through various kinds of communication media, the libraries are playing a pivotal role in acquiring, preserving and transmitting. In ancient times, when the language was not there, people used to communicate each other through touching, gestures, sounds and signs. But after the development of language, the oral communication has played a major role in the communication process. During medieval period, due to increase in the amount of information and to preserve the knowledge for the posterity of the future generations, there was a shift in the modes of thought from memory to the written record. Hence, for the purpose of recording, a variety of formal communication channels such as periodicals, conference papers, dissertations and research reports have been developed. From 1960s onwards, due to enormous increase in the amount of information, the need arises to compress the space as well as to develop fast search and retrieval systems. As a result of this, number of non-conventional media like audiovisual forms, microforms and electronic media like magnetic media, optical media and hypermedia have been developed. So, ultimately it is the library and information professional who has to integrate all these media to transfer the information to the user community. Hence, in order to discuss such an important topic today, today's two subject experts have been invited to our studios. One among them is Professor V. Chandrasekhar Rao garu, who are at present working as Professor cum Head of the Department of Library and Information Science, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, Hyderabad. And another expert invited to our today's program is Dr. P. Venkatramana, working as Assistant Librarian from JNTU School of Architecture and Fine Arts, Hyderabad. And today we consult both these two experts and know something on today's topic with Professor V. Chandrasekhar Rao garu. Namaskaram Chandrasekhar garu. Sir, first please explain in detail what communication is and what communication media means and what is the basic difference among these two aspects.
Yeah. The word communication has been derived from the Latin word communicare. Communicare means sharing. So, we have a group of people called community because the people share their ideas, their resources. So, from that the communication has been derived. The communication basically, the dictionary meaning gives sharing or exchanging of ideas and knowledge, whether by speech, writing or science. So, basically that means by speech orally or writing, that is recording the knowledge, or science through gestures, etc. So, Dr. S. R. Rangan, the prominent librarian, he gives the definition for the communication as communication is the transferring, conveying or exchanging of ideas, knowledge or information, etc., whether by speech, writing, signs or other symbols expressed audibly, visually or graphically or any other manner. That means the communication basically we can say as oral communication and other documentary communication. Documentary communication means recording the knowledge or information in various media. So, that is why we call this communication media the channels which record the information and transfer to the person or group of people. So, McGarry is a prominent scientist. He has identified 5 landmarks in the history of the communication. One is cuneiform type of writing, then hieroglyphics, then the development of the alphabets, then the development of the paper, and last the Gutenberg phase where the printing press was invented. Basically, in the prehistoric ancient times, the people used it to communicate by writing on the walls. Then we have developed this recording the knowledge in the form of clay tablets, parchment, vellum, or manuscripts, writing palm leaves, etc. Then we, after the invention of the paper by the Chinese, and then the Gutenberg inventing the movable printing press, the communication has completely changed. The human society or human civilization has tremendous growth due to that. Means the communication has witnessed or influenced the human civilization, we can say that. So when the human civilization started developing, then the libraries came into existence because of the books, production of books, journals, etc. in the later times. So the communication, basically the librarians are interested basically the written form of or documentary communication, maybe the books, periodicals, journals, or secondary sources. So the latest one is the magnetic and the electronic media. So these are the basic things we generally see in the communication as an important aspect for the library and information professionals.
Chandrasekhar sir explained so far what communication is and what are the various kinds of communication. Now if we come and discuss about the various kinds of communication media in detail, generally we find two kinds of media. One is conventional and non-conventional. And again the conventional media further categorized into different types like primary, secondary and tertiary. And similarly non-conventional media also further categorized into various kinds of audio visual forms, microforms. Yeah. Can you please explain in detail about this categorization and what is the importance of this media?
Yeah, there are different types of communication media. When we take into physical formats, there are print media which consists of books, periodicals and other printed materials. Then second one is near print media, which consists of the computer printouts, mimeographed materials and typed documents. Then third one is graphic media, which consists of photographs, drawings and graphs. Then fourth one is microforms, which consists of all miniature documents like microfilms, microstrips, microcards and so on. Then the other one is machine readable form, which will have this magnetic discs, magnetic tapes, magnetic cards, etc. Then last one is teleprints, which consists of telex, fax and other satellite communication media in prints. So these are the basic types of communication media when we take into their physical form. There, as you said, they are further we can divide these things into conventional and non-conventional. Conventional consists of all printed documents. Non-conventional consists of the other non-printed materials. These are the two types we can distinguish.
Okay, sir. Sir, as explained by Dr. Venkatramana sir, there are basically two kinds of conventional media is there, conventional and non-conventional. But each kind of this communication media is having its own characteristics. Conventional media is having one type of characters and a non-conventional media is another kind of characteristics. Can you please explain what are the basic characteristics of the conventional and non-conventional media?
Sure. So the conventional media and non-conventional media both. In the conventional media, generally we categorize print as the basis and the paper based print based material as the conventional media. And in the non-conventional media, either it is microforms or magnetic media or electronic media, all these things they come under this. But each category has its own characteristics. Basically, the print media or the conventional media, generally there is no special equipment is needed, required for that one. Then the media is, the print media is highly localized. That means you have to either the print book is there or periodical is there. The reader has to go to there, at that place he has to use. Or you can take the book, you can take to the readers. Yeah, that is. Third is you cannot use simultaneously by number of people. So that means copies are required if you want to use the same thing. But otherwise simultaneously you cannot use in the case of the print media. But in the case of the non-conventional media, so if you have this terminals or etc., you can simultaneously
accessed by more
many
than
people.
many people. You can have only one copy is there. You can use several people can use that one. Then basically the print media, the cost of production and distribution is very heavy when compared to the non-conventional media. So For example, in the case of electronic media, once a copy is developed, so thousands of people can access it from different places. So physically, people are at different locations, a number of people can use it. But in the case of print media, if you want to use several people at the same time, so there has to be several copies of that. So the non-conventional media, as we will come to that part, the microforms and the magnetic media or electronic media, the cost of production is very low, and distribution is because it is not heavier. So, for example, a 20 volume set of encyclopedia, if you take, it occupies some space, and the amount of heavy also, the cages we can measure in terms of the cages. Then in the case of, if you take that converts into a microform or a magnetic disc or the optical disc, it's a very light. So transportation costs generally won't be that much when you compare to the print media. These are the basic things when you compare the non-conventional and the conventional media.
So far Chandrasekhar sir explained the basic characteristics of the conventional and non-conventional media. And we had discussed what are the various kinds of communication, conventional media and non-conventional media also. And now can you please explain what are the types of what kinds of media normally can be used in the library and information centers? Because all these communication normally can be accessed through library, and these are the mediators of the in between these various kinds of communication media and the user community. So what kind of media normally we find in library and information
there are a wide variety of communication media that is available in the libraries. Basically, they are classified into three: primary literature, secondary literature, and tertiary literature. Primary literature consists of the periodicals, serials, conference proceedings, then thesis and dissertations, government publications, technical reports, and so on. These are all put together, grouped as primary literature. Then when we come to the secondary sources, it consists of again three kinds of things. Like surrogates. Surrogates means then substitutes the actual material, actually primary sources of information. Then second one is repackaging. Third one comes as compaction. So the first one, surrogates means they are substitutes to the primary literature. They consist of bibliographies. Bibliography means it only lists the books, list of books. So second one is catalogs. Catalogs means it will give descriptive information about the bibliographic documents. Then third one is indexes. It indexes the contents of the various primary sources. Then abstracts. In addition to the indexing, it also gives a brief information about the documents. So that's why they are called abstracts. Then finally, current awareness bulletins, which will be listing out the contents of various primary sources to keep abreast of the latest developments to keep in that particular subject to the users. Then second one is repackaging. Repackaging means the original primary sources will be repackaged in a suitable
user
requirement and will be provided to the users. They consist of almanacs, then yearbooks, handbooks. They will have very short information about places, locations, geographical events, historical events. So then directories, then dictionaries which gives meanings. Directories will be listing addresses, telephone numbers, and so on. Then these are some of the important documents which will be repackaged from the original primary sources. Then comes to the third type, they are compaction. Compaction means these will be produced in a compactable form. They will be collected from various sources and they will be put it in a very compact form at one place, which will save the time of the user and also provide comprehensive information on a particular subject. They are textbooks, monographs, encyclopedias, treatises. These are all come under compact type. So they will have a lot of information on a particular subject which will be satisfying the user to the major extent. Then comes to the tertiary information sources. These are the sources which will be providing information about sources. So they are guides to periodical sources, then bibliography of bibliographies, and then directory of directories. And these will be listing out secondary sources. They will be used not as
these can act as guides to the secondary
guides to the secondary primary sources from which they will be getting information. So these will be used mostly as reference tools and more used for book selection as book selection tools.
Can we find all these sources in libraries?
Yeah, most of these sources are highly used in the libraries. These are basically
Major
used.
categories of
Yeah, major
resources.
categories used and mostly meant for used in library, because the growth of literacy is so huge that most of the readers are unable to keep pace with the developments that are happening in their respective fields. That's why these kind of sources have emerged so as to save the time of the users and provide in a very micro form the relevant information that is required to them, and also they will be very invaluable tools for the users today in today's environment, so as in order to find relevant sources out of huge amount of information that's being generated every day in the current scenario.
Normally we find three kinds of libraries.
Yeah.
One is a public, academic and special
Yeah.
libraries. In what kind of libraries are much using most of these communication media?
Most of these sources will be available in R&D special library environment, because where the scientists will be in need of the current information. So, and they will be very much serious about their time and their valuable resources. And the current unless they have current information, no research can go ahead anymore. So, as a result, their time is very invaluable. In order to save their time, most of their background work will be done by our professionals in order to save their time and also almost provide everything at their desktop without wasting their valuable resources.
So far we had discussed various kinds of sources that comes under conventional type of media, but whereas coming to non-conventional media, the characteristics are also different when compared to conventional media. And can you please explain what is the non-conventional media and what is the importance of this media in library and information centers?
Sure. So non-conventional media means the media other than the print media, we can say the non-conventional media. That means audiovisual material, magnetic tapes, electronic media, all this. So these media, they require some type of equipment to access that information from that contain that particular media. So then naturally in the case of print, you will see only the print media, only print, text, etc. But in the case of the non-conventional media, there are sometimes audiovisual media, maybe enriches the strength of that particular content. So like audio and visual, both combined together, it will be appealing as well as very pleasant to the hearing, etc. So eyes as well as to the ears, they are very pleasant. Then cost of production is lower than that of the print always. So because it's also time saving, that's why libraries mostly prefer time saving and also space saving. Space saving means in a libraries are growing. So the number of books we can accommodate in that particular space, we can more number of the audiovisual or non-conventional media could be accommodated. Then, but there is one limitation on this non-conventional media. They are not browsable directly, because even a book you can directly see that one to scan the pages immediately within 2 or 3 minutes, and you can understand whether it's useful or not. You can judge immediately. But that facility is very difficult to have in this non-conventional media, because once you have to put it on the machine equipment and then you have to scan, it takes a lot of some time to see that, browse that one. So that's why these are some of this one. Even then, but because of they save the money and they save the space, they save the time sometimes. So that's why these materials, there are libraries and information centers, we prefer them, because our ultimate aim is give so much of information, as much information as possible to the user, give access to this information as much as possible in the limited budget given by the authorities. That's why we generally prefer some of these in certain types. So microforms are the first one in the non-conventional media. Then we have the magnetic media, then the electronic media. Then that is in the electronic media again we have the optical media. So before going to that one, let us see the microforms. Microforms, mainly the microfilm. Way back in 1930s, all the some of the important major newspapers, they tried to microfilm their newspapers. So because they have to preserve in the paper form, they may not long last for some years. So microform could be a better material which can preserve the material, can distribute the material also. That's why they started microfilming that newspapers in 30s. So when 1970s microfiche came, so they thought it could be another media through which we can store that information, preserve that information. So microfilm is basically a roll, maybe 8 mm or 60 mm, depending on the size. Then microfiche, just like a film card, it's like a 3, 4 by 6 inches card. We can have about 98 images on a single 4 by 6 card. That is standard size. So the microfiche could be out of the, you can generate to the computer. That is compute output microfiche. So it can have 270 images on a single card, microfiche card. Then another advancement was the ultrafiche, which can store 3000 images. That means in a single card, storing 3000 images of the pages. We can estimate the book could be reduced to a small card. So that is the amount of time saving, space saving on the libraries. So of course the magnetic media, they came and they surpassed that one. So basically these are the 3 things. And the micro card or aperture card, like that we use it. The microprint is available on the card. That is micro card. So these are the 3 media, micro in the, as far as the microforms are concerned, which have taken the libraries, saved the libraries in the space, time and effort.
So far we had discussed the importance of audiovisual forms and microforms, various kinds of microforms. But apart from this, some electronic media is there which comes under non-conventional media. Various kinds of electronic media such as this optical media, this magnetic media and hypermedia. And can you please explain what is the importance of this media in the library information?
Yeah, this electronic media has become very famous and popular because of its specific advantages, distinctive features of space. It takes very less space and it can store a huge volume of information. It facilitates resource sharing and exchange of resources. Then it also facilitates information transfer has become very easy. It is easily transferable. And these are some of the important features which made electronic media very popular. And it also we can access simultaneous operations. If you have certain things at one place, it can be accessed simultaneously and used by different people across the boundaries. So these are some of the distinctive features which made the electronic media very popular, very beneficial over audiovisual and microform. That's why today it has become very widely used in all libraries of the world.
Okay, sir.
And then this media has been again divided into different than hypermedia, magnetic media.
What are the various sources that comes under magnetic media and
optical? Yeah, magnetic media we can take it as magnetic tape, video tape, then magnetic disc. These are the
cassettes.
All these cassettes will come under magnetic media. Then optical media means CD-ROM, DVDs. Come under
CDs and
CDs. All CDs and DVD-ROMs also come under optical media. Then hypermedia means we will have hypertext and hypermedia. Hypertext and hypermedia and hyperdocument, they are all used synonymously. This will provide this is a non-sequential reading medium for textual materials. They provide this physical and logical networks within the text. I mean, they allow users to link information from one document to the with hyperlinks. They provide links from one location of information related from one document to the other document. That is the major advantage that's available. And this hypertext related to the machine readable databases. In these databases, if users wanted to go from one place to other place, when they have hypertext, they can directly reach. That is why they are called non-sequential, non-linear texts, whereby users, so they are physically and logically networked within the text. As a result, if a user wants to go from one end to the other end, with the help, hyperlinks will help them to move quickly from one end to the other end, which is the major advantage of this hypertext and hypermedia, which has been widely used in today's internet resources. you will find most of them are hypertext, using hypertext markup language. They will have most of the documents are having hypertext. You can go from any part of the document to any part at a press of a button, on the press of click of a mouse.
Okay. When compared to hypertext, this hypermedia is having some more additional features.
Yeah, it
having
has
the images.
graphics and images.
Even
It
graphics
has
and
that's
images is the additional feature that is
features.
given.
It includes graphics and images which will attract the attention of the users, and it will be more attractive.
Okay, sir. Sir, Chandrasekhar sir, so far we have discussed what are the various kinds of conventional and non-conventional media. Now, can you please explain in brief what are the recent trends in the usage of communication media in libraries?
Yeah, this optical media has widely used in the libraries like CD-ROMs and DVDs because they store large amount of information. The libraries previously they used it to get these printed sources like chemical abstracts, biological abstracts. They are now available in the CDs and DVD forms. They can access that information in a small compact disc of 650 MB. About 250,000 pages could be pure text could be embedded in that particular CD. Like DVD, 4.7 GB data could be stored. So instead of having so many CDs, we can have one DVD. That's saving a lot of space in the libraries, and also distribution costs, transport costs, and also they are available per years together. You can keep them like so less maintenance, just like in.
They have become quite cheap also.
They have become very quite cheap. That's why they're costly, very economical. They are user friendly, but the equipment is needed to access that information, and number of users can use that simultaneously. More number of users. Those are the advantages in the libraries. They have realized, and now libraries are going for this electronic media, optical media nowadays.
Okay, sir. So far in our today's discussion program, we have covered the topics like what communication is and what communication media means, and what are the characteristics of various kinds of communication media, and what kind of communication media normally can be used in the library and information centers, and what are the various kinds of primary sources, secondary sources, and tertiary sources, and as well as the various kinds of non-conventional media like audiovisual forms, microforms, hypertext and hypermedia, magnetic media, and optical media. And finally, I would like to thankful both the subject experts who have been invited to our today's program for kindly accepting our invitation and participating in our today's discussion program. Thank you, one and all.
Okay.
ఈ విద్యా కార్యక్రమాలపై మీ అభిప్రాయాలు, సలహాలు, సూచనల్ని ఆహ్వానిస్తున్నాం. మా చిరునామా డైరెక్టర్, దృశ్య శ్రవణ కార్యక్రమ రూపకల్పన పరిశోధనా కేంద్రం, డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం, ప్రొఫెసర్ జి రామరెడ్డి మార్గ్, రోడ్ నంబర్ 46, జూబ్లీ హిల్స్, హైదరాబాద్ 500033.
Today we are going to discuss about Zenner diode characteristics. You all know what is a diode, and also you know what is a PN junction diode and how it is formed. You might have studied about the volt ampere characteristics of a PN junction diode. In a similar way, today we are going to discuss about the volt ampere characteristics of a Zenner diode. This is an experiment in the third year BSc students has to perform in the laboratory. So what I want to tell you is, before doing any experiment, every student should know what is the aim of the experiment, what are the operators required for doing that experiment, what is the formula involved in it, and what is the circuit diagram. If a student keep in mind about all these facts, all these concepts, then he is able to perform the experiment very well. Then you may have a doubt, what is a Zenner diode, how it differs from an ordinary diode. Zenner diode is nothing but a two-terminal semiconductor device. You know what is a semiconductor, whose conductivity lies between conductors and insulators. Those materials are known as semiconductors. The Zenner diode is a two-terminal semiconductor device. It is like the ordinary diode, except that it is manufactured to exhibit breakdown in the reverse direction at a specific voltage. Now, let us see today the aim of the experiment. The aim of the experiment is to study the volt ampere characteristics of a Zenner diode. Next, the operators. What are the operators required for doing this experiment? The operators are as follows: 0 to 10 volt DC power supply, 0 to 10 milliamps, that is milliammeter, 0 to 10 volt DC voltmeter, 100 ohms of resistance, that is 1 watt of resistance. Of course, a Zenner diode, that is it may be 6.2 volts or 4.7 volts, and a switch. So, these are the operators required for doing this experiment to find out the volt ampere characteristics of a Zenner diode. Now, let us see what is the circuit symbol for a Zenner diode. See, this is the circuit symbol for a Zenner diode. This is known as anode, this is known as cathode. By using this Zenner diode in the circuit, we are going to find out the volt ampere characteristics. You know that diode works in two directions, that is in the forward bias region and also in the reverse bias region. Let us see how the circuit will be in the forward bias region. This is the circuit diagram of a Zenner diode forward bias region. See, here you have a power supply, a resistance and ammeter, milliammeter, and a Zenner diode and voltmeter. You have to connect the circuit according to this. You know that a bigger line indicates the positive terminal and the smaller line indicates the negative terminal. So, positive end of the power supply is nothing but a battery. So, positive terminal of the battery is connected to the resistance and other end of the resistance is connected to the milliammeter, that is positive terminal of the milliammeter, and the negative terminal is connected to the anode of the diode and cathode of the diode is again connected to the reverse negative terminal of the battery, and there is one voltmeter here. This voltmeter is connected to parallel to the Zenner diode. If the circuit is connected like this, we can call this circuit as in the forward bias region. When can we say that the circuit is in the forward bias region? When the positive terminal of the battery is connected to the anode of the diode and the cathode of the diode is connected to the negative terminal of the battery, then we can say that this is in the forward bias region. What happens in the forward bias region? In the forward bias region, the current will be maximum and the resistance is very low. Similarly, we can now see how the reverse bias circuit will be. This is a circuit of a reverse bias region. Here you can find the same components in the circuit, that is a power supply, resistance, milliammeter, Zenner diode and voltmeter. Here the difference between forward bias and reverse bias is, if you can observe these both the circuits, you can see that the positive terminal of the battery is connected to the cathode of the diode and anode of the diode is connected to the negative terminal of the battery. If the circuit is like this, the diode does not allow the flow of current and there exists a very high resistance. So, these are the two regions where we are going to find out the volt ampere characteristics of Zener diode by connecting in forward and reverse biases. So, before going to the experiment, let us discuss very briefly about the formation of the depletion region. You know that there are two types of semiconductors, p-type semiconductor and n-type semiconductor. In p-type semiconductor, the majority charge carriers are holes. In the n-type semiconductor, the majority charge carriers are electrons. If p-type semiconductor and n-type semiconductor are brought together to form a junction, a very important semiconductor device known as a diode is obtained. This p-n junction diode is essential building block for all varieties of devices. Let us see the chart here. Here this is a p region, this is a n region. Here the majority charge carriers are holes, here the majority charge carriers are electrons. As the junction is formed, one side, that is n side, has a large population of electrons, whereas the other side, that is on the p side, a large number of holes. Electrons from the n side diffuse across the junction into the p side and holes from the p side diffuse across the junction into the n side. So, before they brought into contact, both the sides were electrically neutral. As a result of this diffusion, the n side develops a net positive charge and p type develops a net negative charge. This difference is due to the fact that the n side material lost electrons and gains holes. At the same time, the p side lost holes and gained the electrons. Even then, we can say that the diode as a whole is electrically neutral. Since in a diode, the net positive charge must be equal to the net negative charge in the p region. These charges thus developed are not free to move because they are stationary, because they are bound to the ions in the crystal and they are formed on either side of the depletion region. So, this is the formation of the depletion region. Now, let us go to the experimental part. This is the Zener diode characteristic board. As I told you in the beginning, the apparatus or the components required for doing these experiments are on the board only. You can see each component individually. See, this is a voltmeter, this is milliammeter and this is a diode. This is the power supply which we are using for the forward bias region. This is another power supply which you are using for the reverse bias region. As I told you in the beginning, the positive terminal of the power supply is connected to the resistance. Let us see the circuit diagram again. The circuit diagram for Zener diode characteristics. I have told you that this is a power supply and this is the resistance, this is the ammeter and this is the Zener diode, this is the voltmeter. All those components are now we can see on the board. From power supply, we have to connect to the positive terminal of the ammeter, but you can see in the figure positive terminal of the battery is connected to the resistance. You cannot see the resistance on the board because the resistance is internally connected. So, directly you can connect positive terminal of the battery to the positive of the ammeter, negative terminal is connected to the diode and the other end of the diode is connected to the negative terminal of the battery. Now, we will make the connections on the board. As we have seen in the diagram, positive terminal of the battery is connected to the resistance, and from resistance it is going to positive end of the ammeter, and negative end of the ammeter is connected to the anode of the diode, and cathode of the diode is connected to the other end of the battery. Now we have voltmeter is remaining. The voltmeter is connected in parallel to the Zenner diode. So let us make a connection now. Positive terminal of the voltmeter is connected to the positive terminal, that is anode of the Zenner diode. Negative terminal of the voltmeter is connected to the negative terminal of the Zenner diode, that is cathode of the Zenner diode. So these are the connections to find out the volt ampere characteristics of a Zenner diode in the forward bias region. In the forward bias region, the power supply we are using is 0 to 3 volts. Now let us see what happens to the circuit diagram. Now as we increase the voltage, the current also increases exponentially in the forward bias region. Let us connect the circuit in the reverse bias region. Now let us go for the experimental part. This is the circuit diagram for Zenner diode characteristics in the forward bias. As shown in the circuit, let us connect the circuit now on the board. If you see the Zenner diode characteristics board, on the board we have one voltmeter, one ammeter, that is milliammeter and microammeter readings. This is a diode. This is the power supply 0 to 3 volts variable power supply. This is another variable power supply 0 to 10 volts. Now we will connect the circuit. As I told you in the beginning, the positive terminal of the battery should be connected to the resistance. Since the resistance is connected internally on the board, we cannot see the resistance on the board. Now let us connect positive terminal of the power supply to the positive terminal of the ammeter, and negative terminal of the ammeter is connected to the anode of the diode, that is Zenner diode, and negative terminal of the Zenner diode, that is cathode, is connected to the negative terminal of the battery. Now the voltmeter is remaining. I told you that the voltmeter is connected in parallel to the Zenner diode. So positive terminal of the voltmeter is connected to the positive terminal of the Zenner diode, and negative terminal of the voltmeter is connected to the negative terminal of the diode. These are the connections. After making all the connections, see, I told you that the diode operates in both the regions, that is forward bias region as well as reverse bias region. Here we have connected positive terminal of the battery is positive terminal of the diode. Since both are connected positively, we can say that this is in the forward bias region. After making all the connections, now you can switch on the circuit. Now you can take the readings. In the forward bias region, the voltmeter is, the range of the voltmeter is 0 to 1 volt, and the current reading is 30 milliamps. Now you look at the voltmeter. The voltmeter range is 0 to 1 volt. See, you can see those readings in the voltmeter, that is 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 1. In the current meter, the range is 1 to 30 milliamps. Since it is in the forward bias region, the voltage is low voltages and the current draws more. I told you that in the forward bias region, maximum current passes through the diode and the resistance is very low. Now we can see the readings. How we will take the readings? As we increase the voltage, the current also increases. Now let us see what happens here. You look at the voltmeter. Here between 0 to 0.2 there is one more point, that is 0.1. So when we change the voltmeter to the 0.1, you see the corresponding reading in the ammeter. You do not find any reading in the ammeter, it is at 0 only. Now go to the next point. In the voltmeter, you can see it is now 0.2 volts. Now you see the current reading here, you do not get any current. Take the 0.3. You see no variation in the current. Next 0.4. It is not showing any current. Next 0.5, and you can see a small variation in the current. So as we are moving from 0.5 to 0.6, there is a slow increase of current in the current meter. See, for 0.6 we are getting approximately 15 milliamps of current in the ammeter, milliammeter. Like this, with varying of 0.1 volts, we can measure the current in the forward bias region. Now let us go for the reverse bias region. What I told you in the beginning is, in the reverse bias region, we will connect the voltmeter range of power supply 0 to 10 volts, because in the reverse bias diode does not conduct. That means it stops the current flow and it gives the high resistance. Now let us see on the board. Remove the power supply connections and put the same connections in the 0 to 10 volts, positive, positive, negative, negative. And one more thing what we have to do is, we have to change the voltage and current values also. That means here you can see two knobs for varying the voltage here and one more knob here for varying the current. You can put the knob down like this in the reverse bias and put this knob also like this in the reverse bias. Here now the voltage range is 1 to 10 volts and the current range is 1 to 300 microamps. If you can recall your forward bias readings, in the forward bias region we are taking the low voltage values, whereas the current is very high, that is 0 to 30 milliamps. But in the reverse bias, the voltages even though are very high, but we are getting the current values very low, because the meter reading is also 0 to 300 milliammeters. So the very important thing what we have to do in the reverse bias is, we have to change the diode. If you recall the reverse bias circuit, see this is the reverse bias circuit. Here what happens? The positive terminal of the power supply is connected to the cathode of the diode and anode of the diode is connected to the negative terminal of the power supply. So in the forward bias what we have done is, positive terminal is connected to the anode of the diode, but in the reverse bias this should be connected to the cathode of the diode. The same thing here we have to do on the board also. See, this is a Zenner diode. If you observe carefully, you can see that there is a black dot on the right side. that indicates the negative side of the diode. Here you can see the red spot, that is the positive side of the diode. So, what we are going to do here is we are mounting the diode on the board, showing the positive terminal of the diode connected to the positive terminal of the power supply in the forward bias region. But whereas in the reverse bias region, we have to remove this diode from the board and we have to connect reversely. That means, now we can say that the positive terminal of the power supply is connected to the negative terminal of the diode. Now, the circuit is in the reverse bias mode. Now, I am reversing the diode such that the positive terminal of the battery is now connected to the negative terminal of the diode. Now, we can say that the whole circuit is in the reverse bias mode. So, in the reverse bias, what happens? The diode does not conduct and the high resistance will be produced. Here also, as we increase the voltage, the current will be very small, but the constant current will be appeared in the circuit. That current is known as leakage current. So, still we further increase the voltage. At certain voltage, the current substantially increases. The point at which the current increases substantially is known as breakdown voltage. This is very important characteristic in the Zener diode characteristics. Now, let us see the readings how we will take in the reverse bias. Let us look at the voltmeter. See, in the voltmeter I told you the range is 1 to 10 volts. That is, we have to take the reading in steps of 1 volt. Now, you can rotate this knob so that your voltmeter will show the reading. Put the voltmeter at 1 volt. Now, you see the reading in the current meter, there is no change in the current meter. Put the voltmeter at 2 volts. Then at once suddenly you can see the change in the current. Since the meter range is very low on the board, this is only 0 to 300 microamps. For your convenience sake, just I would like to show how the substantial increase takes place. I am putting the current in milliamps. Okay. Now, let us see what happens. Put the voltage at 1 volt, there is no change in the current, and take the voltage at 2 volts, there is no change. Take the voltage at 3 volts, there is no change in the current, and put the voltmeter at 4 volts, there is some change in the current you can see. So, after that, if you put at 5 volts, substantially it is increasing. That means, the needle is going out of the range. So, what we will do here is, after 4 we will reduce the voltage readings. That means, up to now we are taking 1, 2, 3, 4. So, after 4 we will take the readings as 4.2. Now, there is a small increase in the current, then 4.4 there is some increase. See, up to 4 we have taken the readings, but when we are going from 4 volts, the needle in the ammeter milliammeter is going out of the scale, that is the current is enormously increasing. The point at which the voltage, the current is increasing enormously is known as breakdown voltage. This breakdown occurs only in the reverse bias region. For Zener breakdown, the breakdown occurs below 8 volts, and for avalanche breakdown, the breakdown occurs above 8 volts. So far we have taken the volt ampere readings in the forward bias as well as in the reverse bias. After taking the readings are tabulated as follows. This is the tabular form and this is the serial number. This is voltage in volts. This is current in milliamperes in the forward bias region, that you should remember. Then the resistance. The resistance R is given by V by I. It is in ohms. Now let us draw the graph. This is the shape of the graph for Zener diode characteristics. We are taking on the x axis forward bias voltage and on the y axis we are taking the diode current. See, as the voltage increases, the current in the beginning is very low and it goes on increases as the voltage is increasing. In the reverse bias, if you observe, even though we are increasing the voltage almost up to certain point, there is no current, but practically we can see that there is very small current which is constant known as leakage current, and after that you can see a substantial increase in the current in the reverse bias. This point where the voltage is increases substantially is known as breakdown voltage. Here this you can see a knee in the voltage. So, that is known as knee voltage also. So far you have seen the volt ampere characteristics of a Zener diode in the forward and reverse biases, and you have seen the graph also, and you have known where the breakdown occurs. This Zener diode, as I told you in the beginning, is like any other diode, but the only difference is these diodes are manufactured such that it exhibits the breakdown in the reverse bias region. These Zener diodes are exclusively used as voltage regulators and reference voltage sources.
We welcome your suggestions on this program. Your suggestions may be sent to Director, Audio Visual Production and Research Center, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, Professor G. Ram Reddy Mark, Road number 46, Jubilee Hills, Hyderabad 500033.